everybody. Welcome this evening. And Victoria, we'd like to thank you very much for participating in our Masters of Art lecture and art forum. And I only have a few announcements because we do want to get to some other things.
Future speakers for the continuing the fall series. In October, we're going to have Dolores Kushner and Constance McBride, both who are instructors and professional ceramicists at Clay on Main.
Thank you very much. Don?
Well, we have for all our all the local artists now in the area, we're planning a what we're calling a holiday art market. It's going to be online. You should be able to see the Art Guild website right now, PAAG.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And up here in the top line of menus, there's the holiday art market. We're calling for art. Created a art supplies exchange. So if you're a member, we're inviting you to, if you have art materials you're not using anymore or haven't used and like to get rid of them, offer them to other artists in the guild, you can send them into us, PAAG. And with that, I think we're ready for Victoria. Rhonda, if you want to introduce her.
Sure. Tonight's guest speaker is Victoria Lawrence. And I had the pleasure of meeting Victoria on a plein air event at the Greens Mill a few years ago. And she was off on the side painting a huge painting plein air, which impressed me there right away. But I think, so I went up and started talking to her, jumped right in. Victoria is currently the vice president of Berks Art Alliance, and she is also this year's chairman of the 42nd juried show, which just opened on September 10th. So I know we're grateful to have her at the Berks Art Alliance. But the other thing, she's an avid off-road cyclist, and she kind of combines the two, taking her into nature. And I feel that her paintings kind of reflect the essence of what nature is speaking to us about. And they're lovely paintings. And with that, I would like her to, she's going to tell you about how she does that and what she experiences when she's painting plein air. So, Victoria, welcome.
Thanks, Rhonda. That was such a sweet introduction. Well, at any rate, I was working for this company for a long time, and in doing so, it came from a combination of just like learning off the cuff on my own, and then him coaching me and teaching me a little bit and showing me what he wanted me to do. But also, in actually the tattoo world, that's something else that kind of teaches you a little bit about graphic art too, surprisingly. So I was doing this job, and one of my other tasks along with that was to help take care of my grandmother, who was in her 80s and she was almost totally blind. And how we all supported her was we took turns and would go over to her and, make her meals, get her mail, clean her place, take care of her, etc. And so every Tuesday, it was my day to go over and take care of her. And her activity for Tuesday was to go up to the senior center and do some painting with the group of ladies that were just a small group from her community that were really avid artists and painters. And they embraced my grandmother, Eleanor, because she had been she was just an amazing woman. And we did these art classes together. And as I mentioned, she was pretty much totally blind. And so she certainly wasn't painting any kind of oil landscapes like she had been, 20 years before that. But what she could do was she could take a brush and know that she was holding a canvas and start stabbing color into it. So she would do a background on her own, and I would sit next to her and I would reach around and take her hand with the brush in it, and I would dab it into the color we need, and then I'd come over to the canvas and I would fill in, wherever we need to go, and we would actually paint that way together. And so to me, it was kind of amazing and an emotional experience, because as a child, she put a brush in my hand and moved my hand around on the canvas. And now here we are 25 years later, and I'm doing exactly that for her. And she's letting me and trusting me to just like help her make paintings of whatever it is she asks to paint. And we're doing it. And every once in a while she'll say, "Hey, I can kind of see that. Oh, that looks really good." So we did this for years. We would go up to the center and it would be the same few ladies every time, and we became like family. And every time we would have a class, my Oma would insist that I do a painting too, and not just to help her. She's like, "I want you to paint too. You have to paint something every time I'm here. It's not just about me here." And she was always so generous like that. And so I would do these little, kind of whatever, just experiments kind of beside her while we were doing what was the main feature, which was her work. And little by little, I think just being in the habit of painting each and every week, I started to feel like I was getting a little better at it. Other artists, it was kind of reminding me how much, you used to do this all the time. You had a sketchbook with you and you were painting and drawing, and like, oh my God, I totally missed this. I can't believe I let this go. And it was really her that I thank for giving it back to me and for reminding me how important that painting habit is. And so this went on and on, like I said, for years. So we would do this every Tuesday, and she ended up passing away in 2018 at the age of 93. And even though she's gone, I still know she's with me, because I see signs from her all over the place, like all her favorite things, they sort of surround me at the right times in the right places when I need that like little boost. It's like I get it, and it's directly coming from her, and I can tell. So my Oma is someone that I always keep at heart whenever I'm working now, and somebody who was one of the best influences in my life, and the people that pushed me into staying with art and being into art. And so after she passed away, and I had moved away from working in Pottstown doing graphic art, I had some other jobs. I didn't always, just 100% of the time make an income off of art. And so I did some other things, like I worked as a seasonal helper at Esmond Shades in the garden center, and I like worked in the nursery and tended plants. And I would like take photos of the plants and go home and make art of them, or like play with my photos and manipulate them, and end up coming up with cool painting ideas based on the photos I took at work. And that nature aspect. And a little while after that, I got a job working on a vineyard for a little while. I was like, I guess you'd say a vintner, taking care of the grapevines. And again, being able to be outside and have some flexibility and freedom in that job.
Victoria, we're not seeing your images. I'm wondering if you'd like me to show the images from Art Plus, and maybe you could describe them and what prompted them.
There we go. There's an image of a painting that actually came out of the pandemic. That was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all in lockdown, and I sat in my apartment for like weeks and weeks and worked on this piece,
Wow.
meticulously adding like crazy amounts of detail. like listening to prog rock and just geeking out on detail for ages, it felt like. And then I'd get sick of being in my apartment and I would drag it out into the woods somewhere. Like I'd just take all my stuff with me and go out. And like I just couldn't take being inside anymore. So I'd just go out and like plein air paint, but not necessarily what I was seeing, just, you know, what I was seeing in my mind.
Then let's see, there's this one.
So that painting actually was pretty, oh, sure. Like, kind of going into my imagination, since I was staring at my four walls for such a long time, and I would kind of wander off into this garden in my imagination and go into a place like that looked like this, you know, where one world kind of melds into another. And if you start to look at it more closely, you see that there are some different dragonfly at the center left, and there's like a river running through it and a tree with some faces kind of tucked away into it.
I love the fluidity in your paintings.
Oh, thank you.
What are you using as your medium?
Oh, these are acrylic. Yeah.
Here's another one.
And so, true to my nature with being very competitive and cycling and everything else that I do, I started to sign up for like plein air competitions just to try it out and see how that would go. And plein air West Reading is an annual competition that invites artists to come out and participate in creating work anywhere in Berks County. And so you can submit up to 3 images. And I decided that for one of mine, I was going to push plein air to the next level and go out at like 3 o'clock in the morning with all my stuff and drag it down this really steep embankment to a little fishing spot that's along the lake, Antietam Lake, which is where I was here. And so I held a flashlight in one hand and I had my paintbrush in the other. And I literally stood there painting in the dark until the sun came up. And so that piece is called Gemini. And right there at the top, you can see the moon. And there's actually, it's cut off a little bit. It shows 2 stars kind of hovering up above the moon. They're actually not stars, they're planets. It's Jupiter and Mars that were in conjunction.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's this
with
one.
That full moon. it was kind of like a magical sort of a moment in time. And it just, yeah, it was a really wild experience getting to plein air paint in the dark. Prayer. So there's kind of a funny story with this one that actually begins with a different painting. I had been getting ready to put some new artwork in Art Plus Gallery. They were having a bi-monthly changeover coming up, and I had a work that I was like finishing up, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's like a painting that I did that was kind of partially like some other like kinds of gladiolas and different flowers in it. And a friend of mine saw it and fell in love with it and bought it from me right away. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I had a plan for that. So I'm like, well, what do I do? All right, I got to come up with something else quick. And always tending to bite off more than I can chew, I decided to start up this piece that was 30 by 30 with like 2 days before it was due. And I'm like, I can take on anything. I'm doing it. I've done crazier things. Why not?
Are some of these dreams, or
so I take on this idea of like, all right, I wouldn't say they're dreams. Not necessarily. I mean, daydreams for sure. Like in this one, I just imagined like a combination of all these different pollinator species like in a circle looking together towards humanity, trying to like collectively send forth their message of the need for more consciousness and awareness. And so, I mean, that's kind of like what my other painting was about too, but I'm thinking, all right, well, how can I re-envision that and show that in another way that's visually appealing and has a strong emotional resonance to it? And this is what I came up with.
I'm going to move along to the next one.
Sure.
This one's intriguing.
So that's a combination of plein air and a little bit of imagination. One of the places that I really love to go and paint is at Rodale Institute in Pottstown. It's one of the first organic farms in the United States, and actually it's the first one on the East Coast. It is this just wild, magical energy that kind of flows around that whole space. And I went there in the summertime and I did this plein air painting of the like the building that has the green roof. There's like a pond in front of it and some trees around it, and there's some fields off in the background. But it just kind of wasn't working. And so I reimagined it as an autumn scene. And I brought in all these kind of fall colors, and I killed all the trees. I got rid of all the leaves on the trees and just redid it so that it kind of felt like this spooky sort of fall moment with pumpkins that weren't really there, just kind of throwing in all sorts of texture and movement and kind of trying to rework this piece. And it's, as it turns out, I really love it.
You still have
It came
that
out
one?
just as I hoped and better. I do, yes.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Oh, and then there's this one.
And so that's a good transition. That's also at Rodale Institute.
This one won an award.
That was on the summer solstice in 20. It did. It won an award through Burke's Art Alliance jury exhibit that Rhonda chaired last year. It got second place, much to my delight. In a happy accident sort of a way, as Bob Ross would say. Almost there, but like it needed something and I couldn't figure out what. And as I'm pondering it, I'm like, I'm a picker. Like I pick at my fingernails and I pick at like the paint palette and like the brushes and stuff. I just pick at stuff. So I'm like sitting there and I'm like picking my paint palette, and I peel off this thick layer and I'm like, oh, hey, I just stick it right like that. And so I got it on there, and then I just continued the tree line running through it, and it all just tied together like magic. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and I still have this one too, but hopefully not for long. Thank you. The next one's just a sunflower from my garden.
Nice.
Again, just trying to focus on, thank you, just focusing on native local species over non-native plants is kind of one of the themes in my work as far as environmental concern. And this piece is just totally imagination, but I feel like it's a little bit prophetic in a way, because I ended up doing this painting last year in the summertime, and I just sat outside in my garden. I did this work with no particular reference or anything, just straight out of the imagination. And I guess I was thinking about my grandmother because she was into lighthouses and it was kind of one of her symbols. So I did this piece, and then just about for the first time in Maine, and went to the Bass Harbor Lighthouse, which when I got there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of my painting. This looks just kind of similar in the way that like there were these big boulders and rocks and the way the waves were splashing, and this white lighthouse that was kind of off to the side. It just was like, oh my gosh. And once in a while, something kind of
Connect.
delightfully ominous like that will appear through my artwork. And this is one of those times.
Nice.
Yeah, very good.
Show me the next
Ooh, I like that. Nice.
one. So this is Angora Dreaming, and it's one of the places that I've discovered through biking. It's someplace mountain bike all over Mount Penn, and as you know, as you're ripping through the woods, you're going through these tight, windy trails covered in rocks and boulders, and out of nowhere you get spat out into this beautiful orchard, and it's like, is this even real? It's like the most gorgeous place. You're like going down through these apple orchards, and you make your way out to this big open field where there's like this gorgeous barn, and there's like a little way spot in the woods with a fire ring, and like it just has this amazing vibe to it that taken by how gorgeous it is. So I went there one time on a bike ride, and it was like, you know, starting to get dark, and I've got lights on my bike, so I'll ride around in the dark sometimes. And it was one of those nights where there was like this summer storm coming in, and like lightning was flashing, and there was thunder, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to get hit with rain. But I had to stop because sure, if I stopped and took photos, I would get great photos. And so off my bike, I jump and I take the phone out and I start snapping photos. And I actually caught one where it looked almost just like this, where the lightning just ran straight across the sky diagonally behind a huge pine tree that was silhouetted in the foreground underneath this full moon with these like pink and peach colored clouds that lit up and strobe when the lightning would flash, and it was just starting to mist. It was this like incredible moment in this little area in the woods that nobody seems to know about. It was delivered entirely by biking. And so I ended up going back to that same spot later on. If you scroll ahead two instead of just one, skip the next one and go to the following, I would end up going back there. And so the first one was this one that should be showing up shortly. It's delayed for me, but there it is. And kind of symbolic in a way that there's an egg that's just cracking open, because it sort of was like the birth of something where Angora Orchard turned into like my go-to place for plein air. It was the perfect spot because I could combine both things I love in one trip. I would take my bike and my gear, I'd pack a lunch, I would take all my art supplies, and I would go out into this particular spot that's like midway up the mountain and park it for the day, and I'd do a painting, I'd ride some bike, I'd have a nice meal, and I'd be on my way. So this was the first of many that came out of it. In the next one is kind of the second installment in that series. I'll also add that through Berks Art Alliance, we've done a plein air workshop out there where we invited members to come out and scatter among the different amazing spots that you could set up and have a great view. And it was a really nice day back in July. I guess it was July. God, the summer went so fast. So Berks Art Alliance came out. We had about 15 people set up around the farm painting. It was just a really wonderful day. And I hope that it continues to inspire people with its magical qualities.
Victoria, why don't we take a break for a second and see if